I see what ho, chaps and chapettes, Game Chap and Bertie here.
Yes.
Yes, indeed, fellows, and I dare say we are now reporting here on a rumour that has been doing the rounds in the Smash Brothers community pertaining to what purports to be some kind of either early results or viable contenders in the Super Smash Brothers Fighter Ballot, where you can vote for your own characters to appear in the game.
Right, yes indeed. Now we reported on this not too long ago, so this is a rumour, an early rumour, on the ballot saying, well, these are the figures or these are the characters that people have said that should appear and are the top running ones, yes?
Right, that's correct. And of course, what we have to remember here, although this is just a rumour, if indeed it has been compiled by someone who has been having their ear to the ground, as it were, and listening to what the community has been saying, then there may be a grain of truth to it, because of course, Nintendo will base who gets in the game upon the number of votes the characters receive.
Well, yes, indeed, it may or may not be, but we're presenting it here to you chaps and chapettes. Tell us what you think.
That's right, so perhaps just the work of an overeager fan here, but indeed, let us know what you think either way, fellows, and here we go. Now,
well, can I just stop you before we actually begin?
You can.
And what is the criteria that has been put as the foundation for this this ballot, supposition?
Ah, yes, I was about to say that actually, old chap. The criteria indeed used by the creator of this list, as it were, are the following: the popularity of the character, the success of that character's series,
right.
Their viability as a fighter in the game, what they've contributed to the history of Nintendo, and constraints to do with licensing.
Right, okay. Well, just looking at that one, constraints of licensing and whether they've been in Nintendo or not before, I think Nintendo have already made clear that they don't mind other characters from other games. They're prepared to talk about that and actually include them within the game. So it's not restricted just to Nintendo, but there we are.
That's right. The author of the list said here that such choices as Master Chief, Goku and Iron Man were impossible, and so they've been removed. But as Bertie just said there, Nintendo have already stated that votes for characters outside the Nintendo universe are still okay. So without further
ado, we might see those, but there we are. Let's get on.
Without further ado, fellows, we'll go here to the front runners of this list, and I'm going to draw some of the more popular ones from this list here. We have here Paper Mario.
Right, okay, now let's talk about Paper Mario. Paper Mario has been put up as a potential front runner.
That's right.
Well, the thing with Paper Mario, we've already got Mario in.
We have
Mario's there already. I mean, there's two of him.
Yes, there are. Of course, we have to bear in mind we have both Mario and Dr. Mario, but fans of Smash might say, well, hold on, because we've already got Link and Toon Link, and before we had young Link, so it's entirely possible we could see a cartoon spin-off of Mario in the form of Paper Mario. And you know what, old chap,
yes.
If you ask me, I think Paper Mario has a very rich and diverse moveset potential. He's got all his moves from the Paper Mario series, his hammer and jump, but also, of course, he could bring in his partners from those games for an interesting variety of attacks.
Well, he could do, I suppose. I think it still could be a little bit overload on Mario if we've already got two, but
maybe.
Perhaps what you're saying has got something in it, yes.
Then, of course, we come to another very viable frontrunner here, depending on how successful the game is, and that is the Inkling from Splatoon.
Now there's an interesting one.
That's interesting.
Now the thing is, you see, Splatoon hasn't actually come out yet. I think
No.
it's coming out, is it June or something?
May or something.
I'm not quite sure, but not out yet. So would a character such as Inkling be received well when we haven't sort of got familiar with the characters within the actual game itself?
Okay, that's a very good
And what
point.
could you do? Just splat paint around?
Well, that's right. We don't yet know this character well enough to receive them, perhaps, into Smash Brothers, but I'm sure that by the time the DLC did come out, we would have become acquainted with the Squid Boy or Squid Girl. Now, of course, what she could actually do, well, no doubt she could use her ink gun to spray paint over the arena and her foes, and perhaps she could have some kind of territorial effect whereby areas of the stage sprayed with her ink would either slow down the enemy or give her some kind of boost. But, of course, that would have to be carefully balanced.
Well, yes, indeed. I think that's a possibility, yes.
Now, of course, we come here next to a rather interesting contender from a bit of a lesser-known game, Advance Wars. This is, in fact, Andy.
Andy from Advance Wars. Well, my goodness me. Now, is that too niche to be received within the Smash Brothers community?
Well, I
do
don't know.
enough people know who Andy is?
Andy is, of course, a young lad commanding officer in the Orange Star Army, and his abilities include repairing his troops back to full strength using his hyper upgrade skill and various other things he can do. He's a bit of a mechanic, you'll see, and in that game, as I said, he's a military commander with his own set of troops under his authority. Now, of course, we have previously seen the Advance Wars Assist Trophy in Smash Brothers, so to have a CO from the game would not be entirely outside the realms of possibility, but of course we have to bear in mind that poor old Andy hasn't seen a game for years.
Well, that's true, I suppose, but would he be popular enough? Now,
Exactly.
if I can sort of pick a couple here that caught my eye.
Go ahead.
For example, Impa.
Impa.
Now, Impa. Now,
I like Impa, I have to say.
Does she have a place in there, or is she too perhaps in moveset like Sheik?
That's a very good point. Of course, Impa is a member of the Sheikah, I believe, and in Hyrule Warriors, of course, she wields a very large sword with which she slices up her foes and attacks, if I remember correctly, with ice-based special moves. Now, of course, we don't really have too many characters like that in Smash Brothers. No. We have, I think, one ninja in the form of Sheik, but I certainly think there would potentially be room for more ninja-like movesets in the game, other, of course, than Greninja, the newcomer in the Wii U version.
Yes, indeed. I think Impa's not a bad sort of selection there. Possibly, yes, a contender, I think. And now another one,
yes,
rather interesting, although we already have, of course, the monkeys in there, as it were, Cranky Kong.
Cranky Kong?
Cranky Kong. Does he have a place belting people with that great big walking stick?
Well, if you ask me if there is going to be another DK rep, and frankly I do think the game is sorely lacking Donkey Kong representatives, there does need to be at least one more. It would have to be, for me at least, Dixie Kong, not Cranky, I think.
Dixie. Ah,
yes.
That's a good one. Now, that's also been mentioned as well, I see.
As has, of course, the notorious villain King K. Rool. Now, many fans have been clamouring for K. Rool, I'm sure, since Smash Bros. First started. He is a very popular contender for an inclusion, and I'm sure many people have voted for him. And certainly, he'd be a rather fresh addition, because, of course, he's a villain. He can throw his crown, he could use his blunderbuss, he could use his Mad Frankenstein-style suit in various attacks. He has many options that would bring a fresh moveset to the game. So, yes, if you ask me if DK is popular enough, I think King K. Rool would be a strong contender.
Yes.
Although, of course, we have to bear in mind, once again, he hasn't seen a game in many years.
Well, he hasn't, no, indeed. But agreeing with you there, King K. Rool is a well-known character from DK Games. And I think that he's got a possibility, I think. Because it's not just we're looking at what people say that they're voting for here, but, of course, what Nintendo also are likely to take on board. That's important.
That's very important.
It's not just about what people put forward, it's whether Nintendo, in their mindset, will take that on or not.
And then, of course, we come to a certain princess. Now, we've got Peach, we've got Rosalina, so the natural question to be asked is, why don't we have Princess Daisy?
Daisy. Well, yes, I mean, if we look at the Mario Kart, we've got Daisy in there, as well as Princess Peach.
Now, of course, fans could argue and say, well, actually, this is not Super Mario Smash Brothers, this is Super Smash Brothers, so we don't need every last representative from Mario in the game. But if you ask me, Princess Daisy could bring an interesting spin on Peach's moveset, because, of course, Daisy is a bit more of a tomboy. She could be more forceful in her attacks, perhaps move a little bit slower and hit a little bit harder than Peach.
Well, that's a good point, possibly. I mean, yes, she's on the table. It could be.
I'd like to see her there, but I can't be sure of her.
No, most certainly. Now, another one that was mentioned, I don't quite know what we think of this one, Mac Rider?
Mac Rider? Is it Mark Rider or Mac
Mark
Rider?
or Mac Rider?
Either way, this particular fellow, I would normally completely dismiss him as total lunacy. However, his song has appeared in Smash Bros., of course, many times. I think originally as a remix on the F-Zero stage. Now, he originally had a game, I believe, way back on the NES. Now, of course, since he has such an old, history, as it were, he's been around almost since the start of Nintendo, in fact, one might think he has a chance, but, really, is he popular enough to get in this game? Do people even know who he is?
Well, I don't know. Well, a lot of people might not know who he is. I mean, it's a point. I mean, you could put him forward, but then, what about Duke Nukem?
Duke Nukem, really? I don't think we'll be hailing the king anytime soon, El Chapper. But anyway, moving on to more Nintendo representative sales, we have here, let's see now, Wart from Super Mario Bros. 2. Now, I think that's just getting out there a bit, El Chap.
I think it could be a little bit too far out in the field over there somewhere. Yes, I think possibly.
I don't think Wart is like it, but many fans have been calling for another Nintendo rep in the form of Groose. Now, Groose is from Zelda Skyward Sword.
Yes, he most certainly is, of course. Once again, whether he's popular enough character to be included or well known enough, I think, and I think Nintendo do look at that when they're looking at these characters.
Yes.
Because everyone may have their own favourite character within a game.
Yes.
But whether Nintendo think that's popular enough in the community to include is another thing, of course.
That's a very good point. And of course we come to a few less likely chaps here in the form of Monita, Mano from Pushmo Pulmo, I forget the name of the game, old chap, Karate Joe, the Harmo Knight, Pooh from Earthbound, Rundus from Metroid, and Slippy Toad from Star Fox, among others.
Rundus from Metroid, my goodness.
I liked him. He was great, old chap.
He wasn't too bad. Went out quite early, as I remember.
He did, the poor fellow.
But does he have a place there with his ice beam attacks? Well, it's possible. I mean,
I think so.
Once again, is he popular enough?
I mean,
I beg your pardon, enough for, for Nintendo.
Well, if you ask me, if you are going to have another Metroid rep, because of course you've already got Samus and Zero Suit, aside from Ridley, who of course is already a boss in this game, so it's unlikely to see his return, your other options are Adam Malkovich, Anthony Higgs, and of course Rundus. Now, there are various other hunters that appeared in other games, but Rundus is perhaps one of the most likely contenders.
Well, yes, I suppose he is. If you look at it that way, who else could it possibly be?
Yes.
Adam, I perhaps think not. But certainly, I mean, I'd like to have seen Ridley in there myself.
So would I. Where is Ridley? Mr. Sakurai, if you're listening, please put Ridley in this game. I know it's impossible,
You know,
but
I think
still.
it's a sensible addition.
You've got to ask, haven't you?
Well, it's a sensible addition, I think.
Now, of course, we come to the section labelled Fighting Chances in this particular list. Now, we have here a group of fighters who are already appearing in the game, so the author of this list believes they can't appear. This list includes things like Nabbit, Ridley, Kamek, Shadow, Magnus, Elecman, Isabel, and other such who have already appeared as assist trophies, and no doubt disappointing to many, Waluigi, of course. He is an assist trophy in the game already, so it's unlikely that he'd become a fighter, sadly.
Well, it's unlikely, but it's not. It's not a definite no. I mean, Nintendo could indeed pick out some of these characters that have been used elsewhere in the game and introduce them as a main character. There's nothing been said on paper that they won't do this.
That's right. If you ask me, a very good choice for a fighter would have been Girahim, of course, from Skyward Sword. He has so much personality. He has a very unique fighting style with his teleporting to and fro, but of course he's already an assist trophy, so really, if you ask me, that might be a lost opportunity there.
Well, it's possible. I'm just thinking as we're going through this list of other different characters, one just come in my mind as a possibility. What about Crom there from Fire Emblem?
Well, of course, Crom has already been deconfirmed for this game, thanks to the fact that Lucina is already in, and then famously, in that cutscene, Crom was left lying on the floor after Captain Falcon knocked him out. So
yes,
I don't think we'll be seeing Crom, sadly. However, then of course we come to the list of third-party characters. Now, the author of our list here says the chances of these characters appearing are slim, and so they're to be regarded as out of the running. However, of course, Nintendo have not discounted this possibility of third-party characters, and we have some interesting ones on the list here. The first, actually, is Professor Layton.
Yes, indeed. Rather interesting later there on the list. What he'd quite do, I don't know.
He'd throw puzzles at his foes, of course.
Maybe, yes, Final Smash drive into someone with his little red car or something.
Layton Mobile, that's right.
Something like that could be.
Then, of course, objection! It's Phoenix Wright on the list.
Phoenix Wright, well, there we are. He could poke them in the eye with his finger, couldn't he?
Hold it! He could use legal arguments to stop them dead in their tracks.
But I think, just being sensible about it, I think, yes, unlikely for Phoenix Wright, although one that's mentioned is Bomberman, and perhaps there would be a place for him.
Really, Bomberman, if anyone, Bomberman does deserve a place in Smash Brothers.
So.
His games are just so classic, and just think of what he could do. He could throw bombs all day long.
Exactly, I mean, he's...
Well, actually, what else could he do?
What he can throw bombs?
He can throw bombs, and his up B is bombs, and his side B is bombs, and his down B is
Well, it doesn't matter,
bombs,
it's just different bombs, isn't it? But I still think he's got a big history. It's a good one you could put in.
I'm sure they could do something with Bomberman, really.
Yes.
Shantae, of course, is another very popular choice, as we've covered previously. We also mentioned to you before Shovel Knight and Knuckles, and also Bayonetta, and then we come to Rayman.
Ah, yes, of course. Now, there's an interesting one. Once again, Captain Chefx, this is third-party characters.
Yes.
That have been put forward in this supposition or this presentation.
Hypothetical list, that's right.
Hypothetical list, whatever you like. Now, you just said one there.
Rayman.
Rayman.
I think Rayman definitely has a chance.
Yes, indeed. There we are. Rayman, yes. Once again, one of the suggestions, and it just made me think there. I don't know why, but because of a similar sort of name character in Mortal Kombat, what about some of the Mortal Kombat characters?
Like Scorpion and Sub-Zero.
Yes.
I like the idea. They could say, "Come here," couldn't they, old chap?
They could do, yes. I mean, people may think about those. Perhaps they don't have a
Are
place.
they a bit too violent, really?
Perhaps they're too unique to their own fighting game.
Yes, I think they might be, but it's certainly an interesting idea. And of all people, I mean, we've seen the Wii Fit trainer. Apparently, the fans want Cooking Mama.
Cooking Mama.
Cooking Mama.
Right.
Say it again.
Cooking Mama.
Right.
Yes.
Okay.
Cooking Mama. Well, I mean, okay. At first, you think, what absolute, complete, ridiculous nonsense. Let's just go out and just leave that completely. But of course we have the villager.
We have the villager. We have the Wii Fit trainer.
Got the Wii Fit.
After Mrs. Sakurai brought in Wii Fit trainer, I can't discount any possibility. We just don't know what that man's going to come up with next. So
we don't know.
Any possibility is on the table here, Fails. We also have, of course, Banjo-Kazooie, who Phil Spencer of Microsoft has already confirmed would be okay for Nintendo to use. Well, I bet he would, of course. That would be very handy for Microsoft, wouldn't it, old chap?
Well, it would be, yes.
I can't see those two getting in, of course, because Microsoft are Nintendo Nintendo's rivals, and they currently own the rights to Banjo-Kazooie. But you never know. You never know.
Well, you don't know, and I think also, Master Chief is an interesting one to think about as well.
Yes, but of course he is directly in competition, I should say, with Samus, so that's unlikely,
True.
old chap.
This is true, yes.
Then, of course, just a couple more to finish us off here. We have Beautiful Joe, Tails, the Slime from Dragon Quest, Simon Belmont from Castlevania, the Black Mage, and indeed Amaterasu.
Right, of course. Now, these were all third-party characters, so
Yes.
just looking up again at the top there, where we were thinking about earlier on our own notes,
Yes.
where we were looking at what this list says is front-runners.
Yes.
I think, we're looking at King K. Rool there, interesting.
Yes.
I said Cranky Kong, and of course there's also Diddy, of course.
Dixie, yes, that's
Dixie,
right.
I beg your pardon. Impa.
Yes.
Paper Mario, you mentioned.
The Inkling.
We didn't mention was Wonder Red.
Wonder Red, yes,
Now,
indeed.
he's already a trophy, I think.
Unite Morph! That's
Yes,
right. Of
These
course,
are possibilities that have been put forward.
he is a trophy, as you say, but he could easily be turned into a character. And of course, let's not forget Crystal from Star Fox.
Indeed, and I think Bayonetta was mentioned as well somewhere.
That's right, of course, she's a third-party character.
She
So
is.
there you go, videos. A lot of contenders here for Super Smash Bros. Which ones of these are your favourite? Do you think any of them have a fighting chance? And who would you like to see in Smash Bros. The most?
Most certainly. I mean, is this, what we've just read out to you, do you think it's sensible some of these ideas have been put forward?
Yes.
Or do you think they're absolute nonsense or whatever? Do you think that it's more geared to perhaps what Nintendo would allow through and what they think is popular?
Yes.
And should we just choose those? Or do you think that they should, Nintendo should swing the door open to some of these less popular characters and let them in anyway?
Well, if you ask me, my vote for the least likely contenders would have to be people like Freddy and Goku. I mean, that's so unlikely, old chap. And yet so many people seem to want them. I mean, there you go.
Well, Professor Layton, some of those ones that are way out there in the way field somewhere. Yeah?
That's right, Professor Layton. I'd like Professor Layton, of course I would. But there you are, fellows. I dare say this has indeed been Game Chap and Bertie then bringing you news on a possible list of contenders for Super Smash Bros. DLC. Thank you most kindly for joining us, and we
Yes.
hope you found this as interesting as we did.
Most certainly, yes indeed.
Join us once more in the next exciting Nintendo outing videos. We look forward to seeing you then. Until then!